pleasure to see all of you come in. I was just standing over here to the side thinking what I would give if you could have enough time where all of us could just visit one-on-one. I could learn so much from you. And it would, what a treat that would be. But I'm so honored that you come. By the way, congratulations, hats off to you. Did you see Friday? You guys raised 176.6 bushels. Congratulate yourself, because I got news for you. You're way over 200 if the nation raised 176. And I'm really, really proud of you. That is tremendous. And you see Illinois at 200 bushel broke for the first time ever in history in the state of Illinois. You realize those guys in here from Illinois are in the 240 range, because there's some marginal ground in places that didn't make 200. And so I'm proud of you. It means you put a tremendous effort in, and you're paying attention to the details. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Because as you and I raise more, there's challenges, isn't there? And the main challenge you and I have as we raise our families is, how do we stay in the sweet spot for our family so that we're helping ourselves as we grow our farm, we remain profitable. I saw this survey, and it's really interesting to me. They did this in a survey of all the farmers in the nation. 31% of the farmers say the problem we have is we need higher grain prices. Well, I agree. When we all love $4.25 corn. But we're missing the boat. If those 31% say that's where they're going to go, they're going to have to catch this horse and get back on. Because that's not going to be an easy place to go. And so 24% said the solution for our family farms is to manage inputs. And I agree. I'm part of the 24%. You and I have to get really good at watching our costs. And these opportunities that we've had in the last 2 years, just think about the day when corn goes to $5, where you and I are going to be. Because you're going to have your game on, and you're going to have your farm in a really, really good spot. So where's your comfort zone? Everybody has a little different layer, don't they? This gentleman here is 54 years old. He lives over by he's in eastern Illinois, right on the Indiana line. And he rented his farm out to a young farmer next to him, cash rent. And he said, I'm done. I'm not going to mess with it. I want to rent the farm, and I want to go to Florida and play golf. And that's his right. That's the great part about America being great, is we can do whatever we like. I'm here to coach you tonight that you and I need to find our comfort zone back in the cab where we start to make a difference. There's nothing wrong with a game of golf. But we'd better get comfortable understanding how we're going to lower inputs and raise yields at the same time. And that's possible. I showed you this last year. And we started to look at our operation, and we said, we need to capture $125 savings. We need to tighten our belt. And we need to start to understand every input, every operation, every pass, the equipment that we're running. Can we get down to a break even after we pay ourselves the cash rent that our family demands? Can we get down? And last year we were at $378. That's where our break even was. In other words, we paid all the insurance and the phone bills and the 401ks and the workman's comp and cash rents to the family. That's where Aaron and I had to shoot for. And so if you remember nothing else than this tonight, you need to find someone. I got this a little blurry on purpose. Every expense that I spend is on that spreadsheet. And I'm very fortunate. I have a great financial team. Tim Kaiser, they don't get any better. And so you might not have a Tim Kaiser in your family team, but you need to find somebody that can build you a spreadsheet like this where you start to analyze every step of it. And the key is nothing can be sacred. All of us have our little pets, don't we? And we're like, when we're around the kitchen table and our sweetie's talking to us about some of our costs, and then we start to bristle and say, that's getting a little close. I really need that extra combine, or we need to cut beans. We really need 2 machines to cut beans, or whatever it is. And so I've just disciplined myself, no matter what it is, whether it's in our specialty crops, whether it's going to be in nitrogen storage, our nitrogen system, or twin row beans, whatever it is, all things are on the table, and we're going to look at them and say, yay or nay, do we need it? Can we get by without it? Can we change and do it a different way? Do we really need that many tractors? Can we figure out a way that we work a little later? And those are things that if we do that in the lean years, and then when we get really good at farming, when we get back to where we're going to have profit, and that's going to happen. The swings in life are there, aren't they? And so we don't want to do those spreadsheets. And I don't want you to become Banker Potter. I mean, you talk about a sour look. I don't know what the guy across the desk just said he's going to invest in, if it's another tractor or another planter, but man, he is not happy. But I want you to instead be investor worn. And where you look at opportunity and you say, yes, I'm going to spend money this year, but I'm going to invest it in things that are going to radically make a difference for us. Let me give you an example. 2012, 5 years ago, this is our dairy. And you look down across this dairy bottom, and you can see the river bottom where we got the sandbars, and you can see we had some severe pain. And 2012 was just about as painful as I've ever had in my life for farming. It was not fun. It was way past not fun. It was like, what are we going to do to survive this year? And so I went and told our team, I said, we can't have this. And we went out, we started to research, and we started to research drip. And we said, what if we would go into those kind of fields, and we would put a drip line every 40 inches at 18 inches under? What difference would that make? And the next time we had a dry year, you can see the difference. And all of a sudden, where we had a field that was only making 20 bushel in 2012, the next time we went under stress, it was over 280. The difference is we invested. And we say to many calculated risk, we said, what if we would do that type of thing? Now, it's no secret. All of you know me. I love corn. About 5 years ago, I started to tell our team, I said, as much as I love corn, we're going to have to start thinking about diversification. You can see in 2012, I'm 70% corn, 30% beans. And the corn on corn was flat out hitting home runs. Highest yields were coming out of corn on corn. We were building all kinds of organic matter. We had mineralization and mic working. Yes, we had carbon penalty, but we understood how to manage it. We were in vertical tillage. We were doing deep tillage. And it was a lot of fun. I would love to go back there. But as I looked ahead and I said in the next 5 years, we're going to have to diversify. And so in 2017, this is how we looked. And we started to branch out. And I well realized that we talk about diversification. You don't have Libby's pumpkins right next to you. But you do have popcorn and edible beans and sugar beets. And you name it, the different things that you have. And so you and I got to get creative. We got to go out and start to look, what are some ways that we can diversify? And for us, this was the first year we ever raised seed corn back in 2012. And you can see last year, we are moving heavily into seed corn. It's a niche for us. I'm fortunate. I got a young man in our operation that just hits it out of the ballpark on seed. Aaron just specialized in it. He's got it figured out, and he loves it. And so as we can continue to grow, we're going to continue to look at diversification, because if you start to look after, these are the net above the break even. So this should not be any surprise, is it? Look over here where commercial corn is. Barely paying its way. Just breaking over. Just have our nose above water. Soybeans, a little bit better. And obviously, the seed corn and the pumpkins are different. So if you're going to jump into those specialty crops, you're going to have to invest. And for us, that meant we started to look at, do we have water? If we have water, does that make a difference that we can pick up seed contracts? Because that's going to give you a lot better advantage. Seed companies are going to come in and say, yeah, we'll give you a contract if you have water that you can take us through the dry spots, like in 2012. That year of 2012 where we had our first seed field, we had irrigation on it. And I mean the neighbors laughed and laughed and laughed because those farms where we're at down by Lincoln, Illinois, don't need irrigation, they need tile. And we got lucky. 2012. 1,100 acres of seed around that field averaged 10.8 bushel. The only field that had irrigation in that whole area, 1,100 acres, was ours, and it averaged 93 on seed. They picked more seed off that one field than they did over 1,100 acres. Now, it doesn't mean we're so smart. It means that we were prepared to capture the benefit. So as you start looking at some of these opportunities, and you see a pretty good-sized field here that's in seed, and you say, well, wait a minute, how can that be profitable, having irrigation covering that many acres? Because you start to look at our soil types in there, and this looks like something your kids might have colored. And you can see not all that soil is created equal. So in this farm this year, this will be a new farm for us. We'll have new irrigation on it. We're going to have variable rate nozzles. And so now we can come across, so all this down in here is heavy, heavy ground. It doesn't need much water. But we got some sand up in here that's going to need a lot of water. And so Grow Smart from Lindsay is going to make quite a difference for us. Is it an investment? Yes. Can your iPhone start to do some amazing things? Absolutely. Sorry about that, Android guys. But it's just the facts. Well, now we can start to build prescriptions. Just like we did for years on seeding, we're going to build the water prescription. And it's going to make all the difference in the world. And it's going to take our yields to another whole place where we've never been. We talk about specialty crops, and it's unique that we have this. Without question, this is the largest paying net return we have. They're just actually just a half mile across town here from us is where they're located. But it's risky. As that fluxes each year or yields, it changes. So if you had 300 acres last year, you might only get 100 acres this year. So it's not something you're going to live and die with, but you're going to diverse into it, and it's going to give you opportunity. Is it absolutely given to be perfect? Oh, no. When they come into harvest, they come into harvest. We were hired by the Libby's to go and do this for about 20 miles from us. They said, we tore this guy's field up so bad, Greg, can you please go take your bullets and rip that? And we ended up ripping this twice. So there's some permanent damage here. So sure, there was especially melons we come in and did, but there's some damage to this farm. And so how do you eliminate that? We talk about investments. Come in and putting in tile. This happens to be a project we were in, and we had to take the overburden. We had to get this tile 15 feet deep to get through a hill. So when you come in and you start to tile some of these farms that have never produced, this is an investment. These are things we're talking about that's going to take you in the years when things are a little bit iffy. How do you and I manage and diversify? Let's go back and look at where we were 5 years ago, because the state of the union is still corn and beans are still our biggest part of our farm. And as we look at it, you can start to see how we start to look for opportunity. Conventional, non-GMO beans compared to Roundup Ready beans. Corn on corn, only if it's under irrigation in the river bottoms. We're not going to risk it. What about some conventional corn? Not that there's a premium maybe there for us, but we can watch the inputs, and it becomes pretty dramatic. And of course, the seed corn stays in this 25% of our overall acres. And so these are things that we're working with. And we say these are opportunities, because when you start to look at the profit side, it starts to jump out at you. Yes, it might be a weed, but it's pretty attractive, guys. And so we start to look at this, and you start to see it stair-step down, and you say, okay, am I open? Is everything on the table for me to analyze around the kitchen table? Am I ready to talk to my team and say, maybe we should look at, and then fill in the blank? Because we cover the whole nation here. And I realize not all these opportunities are the same. Maybe you have in Texas, we'll be able to sell silage here or triticale. We can chop that off. And so we can chop off triticale, and then we can come right back in with 106-day corn right behind it. And so those are opportunities that you're always looking for. But let's take a look at this. The conventional corn compared to GMO traded corn. And say, what's out there? And for years, I'll be the first to admit, Years and years ago, we planted almost 100% Pioneer, and then we went in and switched around, and pretty soon we were like 99% DeKalb. And now we realize that there's a wide family of products out here of really good genetics, some traded and some not. Depends if you're buying Smart Stack or not. And all of a sudden, yes, you're going to come back, you're going to start using insecticide again. So if you have a Smart Box on your planter, or if you have the FMC liquid, where you can put some liquid Furadan on, maybe put some starter in there with it, all of a sudden your seed costs start to come in line, and you compare that over to here. Not that this is bad corn, by no means, but are you and I willing to go back in the cornfield and start to check for corn borer and rootworm and aphids and take that, or do you just write the check right out ahead? I'm not trying to beat up anybody here that's in the seed business. I'm saying that there's tremendous opportunity. So if you're looking at $79 an acre here compared to $141 over there, all of a sudden you realize the traded corn's got to make 17 bushel more to break even. And the reality is I had a conventional hybrid that went 302 in our variety plot. It was number 3 out of the whole plot. And so just because it's not traded, it doesn't have the Smart Stack, doesn't mean that it could be a bad hybrid. It just means you have to position it to win. And those are things that we think about as we go through our farm meetings and we say, what if? What if we could take a lot more acres? So if it's bean acres, why is it in a Smart Stack versus a conventional where we have the ability to come in and manage it? Fungicides and all the things that would go with it. On the soybean side, no different. So we're fortunate here over Bloomington, Illinois. We have a market for a non-GMO bean, and you start to look at it. And you say, well, it's about $12 cheaper on seed. Our chemical program is about $12.85 extra over the standard Roundup type of chemical program. But at the same time, you get $1.10 per bushel premium. And so if you're watching genetics and you find the right beans, there's some serious money here. There's an $86 an acre advantage. And this year, our conventional beans out-yielded the Roundup Ready by 5 bushel over a whole farm average. So it's not like you're taking seconds, but you're going to have to manage, you have to watch your chemical. You're going to have to make sure of the fields that you're on. Now, one of the reasons those conventionals might have out-yielded the Roundup Ready, because I planted them first because I had a cleaned out planter. And so we're starting to plant earlier and earlier and earlier. And you can see here, last year we started on 4/14. This year we started on April 22nd, and we don't stop. Once that planter starts, we got 2 corn planters running. We have the ability to take this planter. This is a twin 20 planter, and so it's putting out 10-inch beans, and we started early. And Ken Ferry will tell you the same thing, about 10 to 15 bushel to early plant it. I'm about gutsy enough, if I was a one-planter farm, and I don't know where you live. Let's pretend you live in Illinois. Not a bad place to live, but I would probably plant beans first. I'd probably do a week of beans, then I'd go to corn. Look at the corn genetics. I don't know how many growers I talked to this year. Just talking to one the other day, he said, Greg, we had a replant on May 23rd. I was so nervous. I thought we were so late. Field went 275. I had another one tell me last week in May went 300 bushel. Ken Ferry's telling me about a grower that knew that he needed to replant, just kept putting it off and putting it off, kept thinking maybe he should go in and interplant. Don't do that. Fight the resistance to go in and drop the planter in and corn this tall, and you only got 12, 15,000 and put something beside it. Just tear it up, start over, especially the genetics we got now. It looks to me like the last 2 years, we can go almost up to June 1st and still yield tremendous. So if there is going to be 10 to 15 bushel gain for early bean planting, which is true, it's there. And I will guarantee you we will freeze off a field soon. It's going to happen. And I'm prepared for it. And so if we take a 100-acre field out because we planted it on the 14th, my goal this year is, the Lord willing, the weather's right, on the 15th of April, I'm going to fire beans. And we'll get started. So those are things that should just get your thinking started, saying, in the conditions that we're in the market that we're in, what can we do to make a difference? Because I'm telling you, there is a ton of opportunity. And I don't know your personal situation, But I would love to sit down with you and we'd say, what are the opportunities and things that you can do? And how do we make this happen? I'm not saying you need to go buy another planter. I'm saying you need to think through your planting schedule and how do we make it count? And those are things we talk about. Your heart kind of gets pumping when you see these little guys, don't you? You realize I was talking with the guys in Ohio, and they were saying if we can just get it up. If we can just get it up, we're just pumped. We're excited. And so when you see these guys, you see they are off and out the gate, and they're growing. Let's talk about what do they need and what do they like and how do they perform. And you can see this guy just sprouted. And I have my thermometer here, and it's saying 53.2 degrees. And you look at that and you realize he's going to struggle when it comes to phosphates. Phosphorus is going to be a problem for him. Phosphorus is tied up in your soils until you get to 65 degrees, and then it's readily available for a young baby corn plant like that. But this guy here, if his little seedling roots, is really going to work. So, starter. We talk about it for years. I don't know how many years we've tested starter. And I would just tell you, it's 10 to 15 bushel. I would say 12 to 15 year in and year out is what the advantage would be. And you say, well, Greg, but we're in a market. So let's just say it's 10 bushel in a 350 corn market. So we got $35 gross. And we realize that there's quite a bit of costs coming in. In that case, for that $18 an acre, that's 7.5 gallon of 1034O. So if everything went perfect, you'd have a return of 17. You're saying, yeah, but man, there's a lot of work there. I don't know if I want to do. So now I'm going to have somebody bring a tank and a pickup to the field. Let's talk about it. Let's just take a look and say, what's happening as we talk about starters and how they perform and the things that we do. So, like we said, if we're going to come out here and put on 7.5 gallon of a 1034O, because we know that we're looking for these phosphates here, and we know that that soil, until it warms up to 65 degrees, those baby seedling roots are not going to be able to pull enough off, and so we're looking for quite a response. Let's just talk about it. So we'll come in here. Let's just pretend that we're planting 1 3/4 inches. That's got to be pretty much in the sweet spot. And so we got this little seed here. Of course, we're going to have all kinds of little seedling roots. A lot of times they like to run right down the seed trench. And we know that we're going to have that mesocotyle come up. Of course, everybody understands corn plants no matter where you live. If you're here from Texas or Louisiana or Illinois or Iowa, we always set a crown 3/4 of an inch below ground. And then you start to get crown roots that come off of that. And remember, there's always 4 to every set. And the neat thing about the way God created corn is that the second set intersects the first one. And so there's always 4. So this is number 1. This is the number 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then guess how 3 comes out? Where do you think that comes out? Right over the top of 1. So 3s come out right over the top of 1. Of course, 4s would come right over the top of that. And so you start to think about, so if we understand how a corn plant thinks, how a corn plant made, and we start to say, well, what if we would come in and put some starter in this environment, and this little root can pick up on that, and all of a sudden, we're going to start to get a pretty happy plant here. And we're going to get some pretty quick growth. We're going to get some yield punch here that's coming. And all of a sudden, I believe, without any doubt at all, you're going to have that 15 bushel if we do things in the correct manner. But the big question is, how do we afford it in a what are we going to be next year? Let's just say 350. How are we going to afford that? So let's talk about it. We've come out in the marketplace and we said, what if? What if we would go in the marketplace? Let's just put some seeds here. We're going to assume you're in 30-inch corn. So we're going to have seeds here 6 inches apart. We know 1034O costs $3 an inch. Okay? For every 1 inch of fertilizer you lay down, it's going to cost you $3. So if we did the full 6 inches, it's $18. Reality is you should probably put $5 of zinc with it, or I wouldn't even use starter, a white label chelated zinc. That almost always takes your chances for more bushel gain up. And then say you put another $5 of a veil another new little product out there that's worked really well. All of a sudden, you're $28 an acre in a $3.50 corn market. So as we looked at it, we said, you know what? We need to ensure. We need to design technology for you that gives you a tremendous chance to hit the ball really far. And so we're going to introduce to you, we introduced it at the Farm Progress Show, a product called Dash. And Dash is going to come in and it's going to have the ability to lay down starter in some pretty unique ways. Let me just show it to you here. Well, you can see it laid it down here in a 3-inch strip right over the top of the seed. Let's just watch it run. So you can see, I'm sorry, must have pushed the wrong button a couple times. Try this one more time. There we go. So you can see Dash running here. In this case, it's running, the planter's running at 7 miles an hour at a 5 gallon an acre to a rate, and you can see it's pulsing. The pulses are driven by a seed coming down the seed tube. So we know exactly where the seed is, and all of a sudden now we have position. And so we can start to position product for success. And so as we do our tests, you could come in and put 3 inches of starter right over the top of that seed, and we don't put anything here in the no man's land. And all of a sudden now we're looking at a 50% savings. So every time a seed comes out, we could have that hit. We have the ability to put it through any type of attachment that you have. Let's say you have a huck step shoe that's over 3/4 of an inch. So we could come over and we could put that starter only beside the seed. So as that little seedling root grows out, it quickly intersects that and you have success. Or you could come in and you could say, you know what, I want my starter off the seed, but I want 3 inches just touching the seed and I want to fire there. And so we have A, B, and C capability. But what it's going to do for you is it lets you get into the game. And it lets you come in with confidence and say, I believe if we have that ability, we're going to be able to play. Watch it run here. Excuse me. So you can see seeds coming out and you can see Dash firing. This happens to be a huck step shoe. So there's a seed, there's a seed. You can see where it landed. And so right back here was a seed and it's putting starter right in the sweet spot, right next to you, so you can reduce the inputs and way kick up the chances of success. And so as we've worked with it, we said, well, how would it be easy to run? We understand that 2020 systems are out there on planters. We got SRMs on every row. It's a plug and play. It plugs right in your SRM. So if you have a 2020 that has the capability to have liquid, you're going to be able to read it exactly. It'll be field view, will map it for you, just like you do seeds. It'll be able to map your liquid. Remember now, as you're turning a corner, it's only going to fire when it sees a seed. So if you have a corner technology in your 2020 from Precision Planting, this is going to plug and play, and you're going to be able to put it on exactly as it is. So we come back and look at the math, where we were $17 before. Now we cut it in half, and now we're in an interesting position. We say, you know what? It's the little things that add up. All night long, we're going to talk about little things. Another $9 of profit. So now we're at $26 an acre on an average year. Last year in the Farm Journal studies that I knew of, they had as high as 50 bushel response to starter. That's amazing. I'm not going to tell you you're going to get a 50 bushel response. I'm saying it's possible. The neat thing is, the industry is looking at Dash as we come out, and they're coming and talking to Justin and the team. They're saying, do you realize we have some really cool new technology, but it's pretty pricey. But, Justin, if you can tell me you can hit every seed with just a short dash of product, now we're in the game. And we're going to bring out some of these new products and these new technologies, and we can afford them because it's just going to be right where the seed itself can take it up. And so those are things that we think about. As we talk about diversification the last 5 years, something that I thought would probably never happen is we've had a tremendous relationship with Sun Ag, Mark Baird, just down the road. But as our farm grows and as we start to take on diversification and we look at opportunity, we said, is there a reason why we wouldn't want to own our own sprayer? And we got the ability to come in, and now we start to do our own chemical spraying, and it opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity. Because now we can start to manage all the different passes, whether that's fungicide or chemical or wide drop or undercover. And you say, well, I just sat with Banker Potter, and he gave me the old snake eye when I mentioned I wanted to buy a Hagie or a New Deere sprayer or case. And so let's take a look at the numbers. And if on our own farm, these are the real numbers. So we make lots of passes. In seed corn, we had, I think we sprayed 2,300 acres on one 300-acre seed field. So we made 8 passes. And so there were some unique situations in there. You know, we had, there was 2 passes of undercover upside down spraying Liberty inside that seed because the seed happened to be a Liberty genetics. And we could come in, and so we were taking care of some real weed pressures. But at the end of the day, this particular sprayer this year covered 560 hours. We covered 17,000 acres on our farm, multiple passes of different applications. So because there was some wide drop and there other chemical spraying, we averaged at $8 an acre. Sprayer payments, $50,000. Labor's $11,200 for the 560 hours. The fuel was $42.50. So at the end of the day, for Banker Potter, I can look him in the eye and say, if I get the sprayer, I'm going to be able to net out over, if I would have done it with custom application, $70,000. And so these are things that we start to think about, and we say, what are the next steps for you and I? Because if we own this asset, then all of a sudden it starts to say, well, what about if we put in our own nitrogen storage? And so you start to look at if we can buy in October, or we can buy in September for $60 a ton savings. That adds for our farm another $17 on top. It's the little things that stack up that start to bring fun back in the game. If I own my Hagie and I own my own sprayer, and I'm out in the field and I see gray leaves starting to light up, I well understand the advantages of plant health. So instead of having to call David, who happens to work for us, great young man, lives next to Aaron and I for years and years, works on our harvest team, he's a fly boy. And he's a crazy one. They all are. But he just does a tremendous job. And so you look at that cost and you say, but if I had a sprayer, what if I took the 360 undercover and I came in? And you can see there's 3 nozzles working here. And we're spraying from the underneath up. And we have a nozzle on the boom spraying down. So 4 nozzles are actively running. This is headline amp. And we're in, I'd say this corn was just getting to brown silk. And we're in here spraying it. And we're going after plant health. And we're going after gray leaf. And so as you start to take a look at it, you say, but does it make a difference? And it's all about coverage. No question the sprayers that are coming over the top can do a good job of getting on the top coverage. But the bottom of the leaf, what do you see? You see a few specks here and there. And over here where we're spraying from the bottom up because the leaf has a lot more openings on the bottom. So you say, well, but does it make a difference in yield? I would have to have some kind of yield advantage. This is Winfield's. This is at their Winfield answer plots. And over all these, excuse me, over all these locations, they ended up showing in corn a 3.5 bushel response. And you say, yeah, but $10. But $10 added to the 26 for starter that was added to the 17 that we saved by doing our own nitrogen that's added to. And all of a sudden, when we sit at the kitchen table at night, we have a smile on our face and we say, you know what? I think we're going to be okay this year. And those are the things that we look at. Undercover in soybeans worked really well. I've talked to a lot of you here before the meeting. We've had a lot of success. This is a plot that we did. Check was pretty high, 81 bushels. Just a nozzle on the booms only on the sprayer. We didn't pay, the material was I think it was $21.35 an acre for the material. And so you can see that we didn't pay for it. But the minute we put undercover in and still had a nozzle on top, all of a sudden again, now we're up close to $11 return after we paid for the pass and the chemical. As we go around the country, there's lots of opportunity. This is in Texas and sorghum. Texas sorghum crop has taken it on the chin as bad as I've ever seen the last 2 years. Texas A&M said if we don't save our sorghum acres and figure out the sugarcane aphid. Sugarcane aphid's a little pest that comes underneath and it sucks, it puts in a proboscis under the leaf, and it sits in there, and it can't almost be killed. They don't know. They can spray every day, and they don't have an effect on it. We were able to come in with undercover, and we were able to nail the little boogers. No different than we did down in the cotton country this year with whiteflies. So pests that are there that have, over the time, have adapted where they, so under the leaf, you come across the top of this field with a nozzle, an airplane, or a sprayer, and we've been able to make a real difference. They were very complimentary. The sorghum board told us we think single-handedly undercover is going to help save Texas sorghum crop. And there's lots of millions of acres of sorghum there in Texas. So those are things that we look at. But as we talk about how do we make a difference in our farming operation, let's go back to this drawing, because nitrogen is a huge part of what we do. And we talked about crown roots 1 and 2 that come out. And the sweet thing about this is you know where they're at. It's not like a mystery. It's like, well, I hope we got some roots down there happening someplace. You know exactly where they're at. And we call them the high dollar roots because if you and I can get these to feed early in this plant, good things start to happen. We know they go down at a 30-degree angle. That's creation. It's not a mystery. We know exactly where they're at. So when we start talking about nitrogen and banded nitrogen, and that's a large input. So how do we win? How are we going to lower inputs and raise yields? Because we're doing that. And that's my passion. That's why you're here tonight. Can I convince and coach and inspire you to take a look at something different than maybe what you're doing in operation now? And so when we talk about nitrogen, where would we put it if we coming in? We know that banded nitrogen is worth 2x broadcast. We've probably been banning nitrogen in our planters for over 6 years now. And so if you were going to come in with a sprayer of a chemical pass before the planter and you put on 120 units broadcast, Mike and his team, the carbon penalty, they're going to feed on that aggressively. And your corn's going to struggle. If we can come in and we put a band in here on both sides, and all of a sudden now we have a concentration. And mineralization happens, but it doesn't able to take it. And so 60 pounds of nitrogen in that environment equals 120 that you wrote a check to from the individual doing across the top of your broadcast. So these are things we get pretty excited about. So then it comes down to the question mark, and you say, if we're going to come in and put 32% on, where would we put it? Where would the corn plant like it? Because we know how they grow. We've watched them for years and years as they grow. We realize that there's coming a day when mama's seed here is going to die off. The starch in that seed is going to raise corn to boot high. V5 corn is going to live all off of the food source right here. No question we want to bring in some starters, and it's going to bring in some small amount of nitrogen, and then these little roots start to grow. Crown roots 1 and 2. Remember, there's 5 sets over time. 3 is a great big guy. He comes later out. 3 is the guy who comes down, and he's your water line. He goes as deep as corn is tall. Got to have 3. If you don't have 3, you can't bring water in the plant. But 1 and 2 are sitting here, and if you and I can use the planter, because there's no question in my mind, of all the applicators in the world, nothing beats this for applying nitrogen. You know where our exact row is. You're covering this field anyway. Why wouldn't you and I take the opportunity to lay down 2 bands of N where they start to go to work for you at a reduced rate? We don't have to write a lot of dollars. And so we're going to come in, and we believe the ideal space to put nitrogen is at 3/4 to an inch in depth. And let nature work for us. I realize the energy it takes to push a disc 2 to 2.5 inches into the ground. I made a living off of that for years. On an opening disc, we studied exactly how much downforce does it take to make an opening disc. So if we can come in let's just say 3 inches over from that seed at an inch deep, and we lay down a band of nitrogen. Then we let nature take over. And as it starts to rain, it starts to dilute this, and dilution takes place, and we create, as nitrogen moves down, the same time this baby corn plant's crown roots are growing down, and they go crazy. They get into this water balloon of nitrogen that's migrating down, and there's a feeding frenzy that goes on. If you looked at them under the microscope, you could not believe how they bush out. Looks like the hair on a dog's back. It's just crazy amount of feeding. And so we're going to come out at 360, and we're going to say, we believe 2 bands of N of 32 or 28%, put on with the planter, 2 3/4 to 3 inches over to the side, 3/4 of an inch deep, all of a sudden puts us in what we call the sweet spot. So let's take a look at it. So the bandit has come, and we've worked a lot on it. And you can say, well, this looks a little bit different than what you had at the Farm Progress Show. That's because there's an evolution of design. And as Tim and I climb behind planters on our hands and knees, and the gators driving behind it, and for well over 100 hours invested, we're just watching everything. We said there's 3 things. We will do no harm. Safety first to seed. The planter has one job. That's to position a seed to go 700x times what you planted. So every seed's got to raise 700 more kernels. Every seed's got to put on an ear. And so we said closing and depth are going to be really critical. So we've come in and we've mounted this bandit with a 5-inch extension. It's spring-loaded. I'm sure a lot of you had. So we said safety first. Not going to do any harm. So, Ken Ferry will tell you on the Yetter Go-Between we run for years, he said, Greg, when you hit a hard spot, that planter starts to come up and you're shallowing up seed. We said end placement is crucial. That's what we're talking about right here. This little band right here is the key. That's going to get the golden star. And then we said, can we do it for a value? My desire is to have you all jump into nitrogen. And if they're going to have to pay $450 to $500 a row, there's always this like Potter bankers like giving you a snake eye, and you're like, well, I think I really need it. I told our team, can we design something that's foolproof? That's a slam dunk. It's towed in so we don't collapse the trench. Put dry dirt on top of the seed before the closing wheels. We got a chain that comes with it. I'm a firm believer in chains. I've watched them run for years. I should have put the video in there. Everybody says, well, chains don't even hit the ground when you're planting 10 mile an hour. Want to make a bet? I know. I had them going 13 with a camera on them. And they just sit there. Yeah, there's a little bouncing around. But it's doing what exactly we want it to do. Because there's times you have a little bit of a wet spot where we didn't maybe close it just perfect like you want it. And if I can bring some dirt over the top of that, we're going to germinate that seed. And so the bandit has taken an evolution of time. You can see it's spring-loaded, so if we hit any kind of a heavy obstruction, it's going to come up. We kind of understand poly devices. This is not a firmer, but it's a poly hose guide, and it's going to ride in there with tension. So if you would get some heavy residue to come through, the hose guide isn't going to, it's just going to pick up and come right over the top. But the ideal placement is you're going to have your seed here at 1 3/4 inches. We're going to have a band on both sides here, 3/4 of an inch under the ground, at that 6 inches to 5.5 inches apart. And we're going to be able to go out and make a difference. Let's watch it run here. So you can see that it's got the ability to be spring-loaded. So as it comes up and over, the 8-inch disc is going to pop up and over the rock, and your planter is going to stay at the perfect depth that it is. So does it pay? You say, well, so you're making a lot of noise about adding more dollars into my system. This is the proving grounds. And so we have an irrigation system here, and we created this year 2015 rainfall here. Exactly. Every day that it rained in 2015, there was a stretch in there where we had almost 9 inches of water. This irrigation system on this part of the plot put 9 inches of water out on July, I think it was 2nd or 3rd. And so we had this side of the plot underwater, this side is dry land. Just keep track of this little strip that you see right here. Just kind of keep that tucked in your memory. So we come out and we said, let's do this. let's add 30 units of nitrogen with the planter. So we came in. In this case, it was only on one side, and we put 30 pounds of N on. It was a 32%. We said because we want to make sure we leave some strips of just that all year because we want to see yellow corn. The whole goal was I was going to yellow corn out and come in a wide drop and green it up in 48 hours and just look really smart on the video. And 30 pounds of N raised 223 bushel. I was ticked. I said, are you stinking kidding me? I said, we put that planter in there. These are the ears after pollination. I'll tell you what, I'm well ahead. I am the head altar boy of this 0.7 club. 0.13 pounds of N to bushel. Why? You look at that and you say, oh, wait a minute. There's no magic here. What happened? Well, we happen to do all of our farms in ISNT. ISNT stands for something really fancy, Illinois State Nitrogen Test. Dr. Mulvaney, who's an environmental scientist at the University of Illinois, named it. You can see how they think when you're an environmental scientist. So it's ISNT. We've done it for years, and we go out to all of our farms, and we take these samples, and they last probably 10 to 15 years, the data from that. We probe it, and it's measuring organic N. So the gentleman I was speaking of with Kevin Winiger from Ohio puts on a lot of chicken manure. He talks about he's putting on chicken manure in front of all of his corn ground. He has a lot of organic N. And so all we're doing is just saying, what's in the bank? Because you come over here, and it's kind of a mystery to me. Here's where the building site was on this farm out of the proving grounds for years. You'd have thought the manure spreader would have loaded this acreage up because it's so close to the barn. But for some reason, he did a pretty good job of driving over here where it was cold, and he put it on over here. So we're saying here, if you got over a 450 organic N layer, you don't need any more nitrogen. So where was Gregg's 30-pound strip of N? It was in 400 parts per million of organic N. Did we need any more N to raise it? Well, we proved that when we went up to 200 pounds in those strips, it went to 262. So it gained almost 40 bushel by adding additional nitrogen. But at the end of the day, this 30 pounds that raised 223 bushel, that's about as sweet a conversion as you're going to get. There was some money on there. And so that's things for you to think about. Obviously, if you have these maps, and we talk about fertility, we robbed Peter here to pay Paul. You wouldn't come in and put 240 pounds of N here. That would make no sense to me where it's green. But you would sure want to come over here and put 240 pounds on. And so those are things that we always pay attention to. So if you're going to add to the planter more tanks, how do they look and how does it work? And we know that there's saddle tanks out there in the industry that are 17 feet wide and they can get you 500-600 gallon. And we've watched that take place. And we said, what if we would jump in and help out? Because I believe there's a shortage of a tank design that's really streamlined. You can see well as you sit in the cab. I'm planning here. You can see, I could see out over the top of these tanks. They're narrow. They fit exactly in the footprint of the duals. And so that we have a 700 gallon option now. If you're going to come and put a Bandit or a Dash on a planter and you say, well, how am I going to carry it? All of a sudden, we have a pretty good option for you that helps with your weight distribution. It's not all out front on that front axle. We'll be able to move that weight back and we can share it and keep it on the rear axle as well. But yet still look out. So take some time and you can always climb up and take a look. But it begs this question. So we spent out a lot of money on high-speed planting. Or we have a second planter. But we're going to stop and we're going to fill. But yet we spent this money and we said we need to get more done per day. So as I was thinking about it, I said, well, I know what it takes us. We average 10 stops per day. It takes us 12 minutes per stop, sometimes less, sometimes more. But at the end of the day, we have 2 hours of downtime. We plant 45 acres an hour, so that's 90 acres a day that we're giving up because we're sitting here and we're adding starter and nitrogen as we're sitting here on a perfect planting day. So I told our team, I said, what what would happen if we could gain 30% more efficiency? Could we get more beans planted early and more corn done in the right time? And so we come up with Sprint. And you can see here it's on a John Deere Gator. It's a 300-gallon tank. There's spreaders on the tires. Excuse me. And so we're running right in the tire track of the planter, so we're not adding any additional compaction. When the planter turns around, it's going to come back right on that tire track. And now the planter never stops. In this case, we just pulled into this field. The tractor only had 100-gallon in it. Doesn't matter. Let him start. It only takes us 3 minutes to load 300-gallon. And we can get there and nurse him. So we just now put on another 300 as he's coming around the first outside pass. We run back to the tank, and we start to say, can we speed this whole operation up? Because we already have a driver sitting in the truck at the headlands on the road. Now, he's got, radios on, and he's leaning back, and he's thinking that maybe Jan or I are going to come there before long. He probably ought to get the hose out, but, he's got time. I never have understood that. Why wouldn't the hose be out and the motor running? I just kind of smile. Oh, I got to get that. I'll get that valve opened up. Yeah, do that. Yeah, I thought about that. And so you just watch that. And I told our team, I said, why not? All of us have a gator or something around anyway, right? I mean, if you're a dairy, you have gators. They're just laying around. And so it's things to think about. But we said, what if we could take some weight off? Because the other alternative, you don't want to stop every 30 acres. You say, well, let's put on some tanks. And you really put the tanks to it. Talked to one grower from Iowa. He said, I figured out I could put 2,500 gallon on my quad track. 2,500 gallon. I did the math in my head at 11.6, and I said, there's some weight there. I asked him later this summer, how'd that work? Well, she was heavy. Yeah, I'll bet. Because you see, the center of our central field planters, this is not a mystery. A wing, a center, a wing, a center, a wing, a center. And all of a sudden you say, well, 20 bushel in this field due to soil type. Due to soil type, but this is painful. If you're the guy, the combine that's cutting the centers and the other guy's doing the wings, you're pretty blue. I mean, this sticks out. Now, there's some good corn here. Don't get me wrong. This is 2015. There's some good corn in that field, but you realize what the centers cost us. And so we understand that split applied nitrogen is the way to go. The once and done, you will never convince Gregg that once and done's the answer. You just can't convince me. It's impossible. I got enough German in me, I'm just going to say I don't believe it, that you're ever smart enough in November or pre-plant to pick for the season. And so we've done side dress in split application for years. And as we've been watching corn grow, we've been talking to you about stem water, and we say, realize there's an area here that's pretty sweet to put nitrogen because it doesn't take very much water. And so if you watch the Proving Ground videos, Jamie did this test. This is a half-inch, the irrigation system's coming over here, and it's going to put a half-inch of water out. We got a tub out here in the center of the 30-inch row, and then we went to Menards, and we bought some little plumbing things, and we said, how much water can we collect coming down the way God created corn leaves, and all that water comes down that center stem, and guess what? It's 8-to-1. So if you get 1/10 of an inch of rain overnight, the root system sees 8/10. Follow me? And so over the years, as I've watched this, colders, and that's all we've ever had, we had a colder run down the center of the row, and we would score this row, and this ground would open up. In 2012, Ferry told me, Gregg, it cost me 50 bushel. I had 20-inch by 20-inch ice blocks in my field. And you could just see it. So this is where I run the colder down the row, and it scored it the whole way, and about every 20 inches, it cracked. And all the crown roots were snapped. That's what started me down drip. I told Cindy, if drip irrigation can keep this ground from cracking every 20 inches, it's worth it. Because if you're going to snap all your number 3 crown roots, you're living off of a 20-inch square of dry, hot soil in 2012. This was a pain that we couldn't do. And so the colders have been out there for years. And we've been testing and we've been saying, but what if we would put it on at the right place? Remember that root system that we drew? What if we put the nitrogen right beside the stalk? What kind of a yield response do we have? And why would it be yielding more? And so we went back to Dr. Mulvaney. Remember the environmental scientist, the tree hugger from Champaign, Illinois? Great guy. He gave us some what we call N15, nuclear N. He says, you put this nitrogen on, extremely expensive. But we put it on in the center of the row, and we put it on right next to the plant with Y-drop. And we said, why are we getting so much bushels out of Y-drop compared to colder? Because we are. It's a slam dunk. And so as we looked at it, they were able to trace the nitrogen at any stage in this corn plant. We took it to black layer, harvested it, sent it to the lab, did it again this year, and they're still grinding on corn. They grind the ear, they grind the tassel, and they test it. And the nuclear N, they can measure wherever it is, real time. And they found out that Y-drop puts 25% more nitrogen up in. And you say, well, 25% nitrogen probably drives more bushels. Oh, yeah. Look at the ears. Remember, every kernel in length is 6 bushel to you. Every kernel long is worth 6 bushel to you. And so you start to look at it, and over 3 years, we've had a tremendous response. And so you see here side dress bars that we've taken and put Y-drop on. All of a sudden becomes pretty easy to go into taller corn, and you can move along at a pretty good speed. But the 3-year average ought to get your heart pumping. Because you see, it's a 6 bushel after 3 years of research, and Bex has done it. We've done it all over the country, in Minnesota, and Dakota, and Illinois, and Iowa, and Indiana. And this is the real number. And so if you're sitting here with a side dress bar, I'm going to look at you and say, go to Potter and tell your banker you just need a little cash. And you're going to convert to colders to where we're going to position in to win. And then there's always the question out there saying, but yeah, Greg, urea is easy. Well, it probably is easy. So you're out there spinning across. It's a brand new spreader. We're out here. Remember when I told you could see that brown streak through the plots? And you see here where the pellet of urea is. And then you see here where the leaves are. And you could pick that up. That 60-foot pass, we actually had 120 feet in there. You could see that all year long until the corn got high enough where it disappeared. And so you look at this and you say, but what does that, excuse me, does that really hurt yield? I apologize for my voice. Let me take a quick drink. And so let's take it to yield. And let's see what the effect is. We go in and we compare it to Y-drop. And you're looking at 15.3 bushel. And this is not bad corn. I'm not saying 243 is bad corn at all. I'm saying that there's a dramatic difference. The easy button is not always the one to take. And so you say, but why would that be? So I threw up 4 years of rainfall here. So we got 2017 in black, 2016, which we all said we'll never repeat that year. Remember that last year? We said, don't count on that happening again. We blew through it, didn't we? Yields even went higher. 2015, remember that year? That's where it rained and rained and rained, and it wouldn't stop. And you can see the green line up there. And then 2012, where we had a once-in-generational drought here in central Illinois. And 2017 was not, if it wasn't for this flash of heavy rains in April, if you see these 2 years together, 2015 is actually drier in the growing season. But 2017 is actually drier than 2012 when you see them together. So you look at this and you say, how would you and I decide back here at planting time? Let's just pick a date here. April 15th, we start planting. How would you decide how much nitrogen you need to finish the race? And that's the challenge we had. And when we designed Y-drop, we said the best thing about it is you can wait and win because you can let the year play out. And you can test, and you can follow, and you can put on a lot less if you need to, and you can continue to raise yields. So when you see Y-drop running here, This individual had it on the planter first go around. So he's got 80 pounds on at the planter. He's now back in at head high corn, and he's finishing the program. And he's putting on another 100 pounds, so he's going to raise corn at 180 pounds of N. And he's going to take the yield into a really sweet spot. And so you start to look at it, and you say, pounds of N per bushel. How much does it actually save? This 5 years ago was our program. We were pretty excited if we hit 0.9 or 1. And we were putting on 240, 250 pounds of N every year in our program. Now, multiple applications. And then we got to Y dropper. We could start to pull back, and now I'm at 180 pounds. And the yields have gone up every year. And you look at it, for our farm, this is where we're sitting. We're sitting at a $58 an advantage per acre with something as simple as an application. Took it and interviewed farmers a year ago, 9 farmers from 5 different states. We took all their data off their whole farm. They were gracious and sent it to us. Our agronomy team worked on it. Y-Drop let them use 26 less pounds of N, and across the board in those 5 states, they gained 8.3 bushel. And you look at that and you say, well, how does that work for other growers? All of you know David Hula, just a champion of a guy. I get to meet him a lot of time at farm shows. Last year in Louisville, he just said, Greg, I just had the worst time harvesting. He said, I knew I was in trouble. He said, I was in a field that's not a contest field. It was going over 600 bushel. He said, for a long stretch, Greg. And I was saying, oh, it's not a contest field. He said, I was so mad when I got in my contest field and it just went over 500. He said, I was so ticked. I said, yeah, Dave, I feel bad for you. Let me buy you a Coke. I mean, it's tough all over. This year, highest yield ever raised in the world, 542 bushel, David Hula did. On CEC ground of about 4. Does he understand corn? Oh, yeah. What's he say? He said, Y-Drop as an average of 12 bushel increase for us. And it's not because we're not putting enough N on. Mark Rosekamp down here from Manitou, Illinois, local grower, told me he had a field that went over 300 with Y-Drop. He was so excited. He said, if I can, I'm going to try to cover 100% of my acres next year with it. First year we've done 75, second year 75. This year I'm going to try to get over 100%. I love Todd Kimbrell. This old boy from Texas, they just don't come any better. If you go on the internet, you can just listen to him in the combine. I just love what he says. You know how they draw down there, just kind of slow. Basically, he said, though, we're looking at 33 to 61 bushel response to Y-Drop. He won. He's a national corn grower. Dryland, Texas, 273 this year. He won in the dryland. So pretty exciting for this family likewise. So these are real things. These are things that add up that make quite a difference. You say, yeah, but if I'm going to do Y-Drop and I'm in tall corn, you know, how do I get that sprayer to run through there without going crazy looking at it? And so we have products over here that we're introducing this year. These will be in the field. We have 360 guide. In other words, we have controls here where it's grabbing in your John Deere auto steer, and we're changing the coordinates coming in so we keep your wheels always in the center of the row. So the 360 guide is out there. 360 glide is a tail that's going to give you boom control. So as the ground starts, and you'll see the stand running here. As soon as we get done here, we'll let it start running. And so you watch it in the field. We're mounted now back in the center of the sprayer for the steering, but watch it run. You can see he's keeping those wheels right in this, and that happens to be one of our seed fields. It's kind of a rough farm, so it's got some hill and valley to it. You'll see the booms here start to run, and so you'll watch the booms. You'll see the boom just come up, boom just went down. See the boom working? So as he's going across the field, in other words, that sprayer's keeping itself in the sweet spot. The Y-Drops are running along the base of the corn, and it's keeping us in a good spot. As we close here, we'll just talk a little bit about the products in the fall. Obviously, in the room here, we got Yield Saver running. We got Chain Roll had a tremendous year, and you'll see for those of you that run Case and North Star and the gearing off, We're going to have an option for you next year. We'll be doing a beta test on that. The Ripper point itself, we got 3 different styles of points now. This is the heavy duty. It's the brazed one. That's a technology that's really interesting, and that's one you can't destroy and rock. And so those are options that are out there. And you can see here what the case is going to look like in the Gearing Off North Star. It'll be individual blades bolted on, and you can see here how it's going to be. But at the end of the day, you and I are sitting here tonight here in Morton, Illinois, and we know that we're going to be going back home here at the end of the week, and we're going to have opportunity to look at our own farm. And remember, nothing's sacred. Everything's on the table. Everything can be cut. Everything can be added to. You have to take a fine-tooth pencil and you look at every one of your costs. I'm not saying you shouldn't write any checks. I'm saying you need to go out and invest in things that help you lower inputs and increase yields. So we're going to take just a real short break. I know you've been sitting, but those pads are wonderful, aren't they? Kind of an in-house joke. You're taking those home. So you're going to take those little stadium seats home. So John, we're going to have questions. I forgot. Did you notice I forgot to say something about texting ahead?
Well, somebody noticed and asked the questions.
Oh, great.
It could be from the Facebook and YouTube folks.
So yeah, if you're shy and don't want to ask your question in front of all the people, you can still text in your questions, and we'll answer those. We'll just do a quick stand-up and stretch, and we have plenty of food left. They've restocked for you. If you're handy and want to grab another plate and a drink, great. But we'll do questions for a good 15 minutes, and then we know everybody wants to get back to the hotel or head home. But we'll stay as long as you'd like. But do a stretch. We'll start here in about 2 minutes. So we'll also pass the microphone. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll get you the mic and you can ask it.
We've done a lot of work on foliar, soil biologicals, nitrogen. We've tried a lot of different things. I haven't gotten anything to be a constant performer. In other words, I could say, Tim, you put that on a wide drop on soybeans, you'll get 5 bushel an acre. I have not found that. We see some response. We tried it in the next field, didn't see a response. And so for this gentleman, he's seen a pretty good response to soil biologicals. And I asked him, I said about, he thought anywhere between not over $30 an acre of product, but seeing some really good response. Doing a lot of soil lab work with it. So it's an interesting thing. John?
Yep. Anybody? Yep. Dave.
On your starter for your corn, your 7.5 gallons, you talked about that in furrow, I believe. Is that all in furrow, or is there anything with any other type of either huck step shoe or furrow jet, something like that?
Yeah. We wouldn't be putting 7 gallon on the seed. So our program on the seed is about 2.8 to 3 gallon, and then we add another 1.6 of water to it, because our planter seems to run about right at 4.5 gallon an acre on the Deere system with the FMC monitor. So we're spiking water with it to get up to that 4.5. But actual active of 1034.0, we're only going to be about 3 gallon max on the seed itself. With Dash, though, I would say this. We're looking at different rates. And Ferry did some interesting work with on the seed. And I think we could come in here with a 3 gallon active, with 3 gallon of water for a combination of 6 gallon to the acre. But realize we're going to cut it by 50%, so we're only hauling 3 gallon. So now my 400 gallon tank on my planter can easily get us outside of a 100 acre field without worrying about filling. So we'll bring 32% with Sprint to our planter, but the 400 gallon tank in the center will be carrying the starter. So those are the type of work that we do.
Can you safely increase your speed with wide drop height control and guidance?
Yeah. So the question is, if we have the 360 guide on, can we increase our speed? Yeah, I've seen 15 mile an hour in standing corn. I'm comfortable with that 13 to 14. I think wide drops are going to run the best about 12. So I don't know if you get it going at 15, but I'm very comfortable with what I saw on the sprayers that we had on our operation. So
you talked about adding zinc to the starter. Have you done any testing with sulfur?
Well, yes, sulfur. So anytime we're putting on nitrogen, we're always going to have sulfur in there at 10 to 1. So in other words, so if we're putting on 30 gallon of 32%, we're going to put on 3 gallon of a sulfur product. And so same way with in the starters, we're a little more careful in the starters with sulfur. We'll always have a chelated zinc in. And so we're at 1 quart to the acre. So I would definitely want to be having, I would not use starter without zinc. It's just, to me, it's just all the research we've seen over the years, way back. Every time you put zinc in, it would take a response. Otherwise, it was about 50-50. So that's things to think about.
So a couple related to center compaction. One is, why don't you run tracks on your planters? And the second is, does all that weight from the tanks contribute to center compaction?
Well, there's no question that, you're going to have a tractor pass. I'm not going to draw it very well, but, and then it's always the pinch rows that grab you. So we do run tracks on the planter, and that's been a tremendous help. We run tracks on the planter tractor. When you're in narrow row corn, it's kind of about the only choice you have. So, but we still see, in this case, this was the way I showed the yield drag in the center. That was a wheel planter. It was a tractor pulling a planter that had a pinch row. And so it's always this row in the pinch that's hurting the yield. I've seen as much as 67 bushel. The picture that you saw where the corn was down, That was 67 bushel in that 8 rows, difference than outside wing. That was a year in sable soil. That farm was on the dampish side, and there was a real hit. It took the whole farm down about 21 bushel to the acre across the whole farm due to these 8 rows in here that had that kind of a drag. So Traxon planters are definitely an asset. You got to realize you're going to go to Potter and you're going to ask him for $40,000. And he's going to give you the snake eye, and he's going to say, well, why are we putting Trax on the planter? Why don't you go and just wait until it's fit to plant? And so those are things you got to think about. But it's the pinch row here that really bites you. That's where you got to, you know, on each side. So those are things to think about.
Question? Question?
They're shy.
That's why we have the text number.
Okay.
So they're not shy on the text number. On bullet, with 3 different types, how do I decide which one I should try?
So the bullet's going to have 3 different series. The chrome bullet is going to be the high wear one. You're just not going to wear it out. I mean, it's just going to have, but it's not going to like rock. And so if you tell me you're in an area that have a lot, if you said stone, I would immediately tell you you're going to go to the heavy duty plus. Because when you guys say stone, you're serious rock guys. In Illinois, they would say we got some rock. In Minnesota, they say stone, and that means they got serious rock. I'm talking serious rock. So there's three options. There's a really high wear one that doesn't like to hit a lot of rock. Can it hit 1 or 2 rocks? Yes. But it's going to break if you get into heavy rock country, or if you hit a lot of shell. Down Texas at 12 inches, we got a lot of shell stone, and that's going to be a problem. The second one is going to be much heavier. It's the one we've had out for years. It's going to take rock. It's not going to wear as long as the first one. And then the heavy-duty one is the most expensive one, and it will wear and take stone. It'll take any kind of rock that you can hit. So the springs are going to trip long before that point's going to break. We've had them in Morris, Minnesota on thousands of acres. We had them everywhere in Michigan we could find that had some serious issues. So to the north is where that went. And I think we had over 500 points of those running. So.
Anything? Questions?
Any questions?
I don't want to ignore you. Yep.
Right here. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Newberry. Let's make sure I can hear you.
Your in-furrow
Starter?
starter applicator, what's the appliance called?
Dash?
The dash.
Right.
Is that a predetermined distance at 3 inches, that a 3-inch band that it sets? Can you change that?
We
Have
can
you
change-
experimented with it in a tighter band or a wider band?
We can change it to whatever you would like it, so we can fire that valve as often as we like. So we will know, it's always going to be triggered by the seed. So outside of the seed tube, we have a second sensor, so we want to know exactly where the seed is. And so as the seed exits the seed tube, we're going to pick up. We are then going to say, okay, we know where it's at. We're going to know the amount you want and the length that you want. So we can change how long it's going to stay open and how much material we're going to give by your given speed. Justin, would you like to add anything to that? So we haven't had the kind of growing season that we want yet with Dash. That's going to be this year. And if you have an interest in it, we're obviously going to have some beta this year. Please talk to Justin and JT and the guys. I would like to get a name. So we're going to be looking for some planters that we can go on and do research. And you can pick what you'd like. You say, well, I got a huck step shoe, or I got a yet or go between, I want to be out here with it. That's fine. We'll be able to put the dash where you want it. And so we're going to be looking for some farmers to work with and to help do the research. So, good question. Thank you. There was one right here beside him. I looked right past. Yes. I can repeat it too if I can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me? I was just wondering, in correlation with your granular fertilizer that you put down, your nitrogen, what would the volatility be more on your granular or the liquid fertilizer?
Okay. So the question is on granular nitrogen versus liquid nitrogen.
The volatilization that you'll get, the correlation between the two.
What would be the relationship between the two?
Which one would be
Well,
more
in the States here, it just becomes, on the bigger planters, it's going to be liquid. That's just the nature of the beast. Because for us to be able to get the kind of volume we need, it's just going to be really hard to get a granular product in the field, get the right nurse equipment that could nurse it to get it done. So you're going to see, you'll go to certain parts of the country that there's still some granular, but it's on smaller planters. When you get into the 16 and 24 row and larger planters, it's going to be liquid. It's going to be either 28% or 32% nitrogen, or it would be a 722.5 or 1034 row starter. But it's a good question. Do you use granular? You do. Good. And a ready source? You have a good source? Good. 46% nitrogen down. And I don't think there's any question you're buying it cheaper than we probably are buying our liquid. But it comes logistics. And so if you have a lot of co-ops, how are we going to move? It's no different than the granular on the side dress bars in the fall. I've had a lot of friends that geared up. They bought the 24-row machines with the carts in between, and then they sat and they waited 2-3 hours a day just for product because the co-op was nursing their own spreaders, couldn't get it there. Then they said, well, we're either going to have to jump in and buy our own nurse equipment. You know, it comes down to logistics. Nothing wrong with it by no means. So, yes?
Could you comment on your twin row weeds?
Yeah, so, sure. I'm a pretty big proponent of narrow row beans. Of course, for years we've had them in 20s. And so the twin 20 gives us a chance. So we're going to be going out, we're going to go out at 120,000 population this year. And we're going to be in a twin 20 config. By far, it seemed like the highest yields come out of this planter this year versus even the 20-inch. But it's an expensive planter to run. I mean, there's just lots of components, lots of things happening, extremely heavy, pulls hard. The sweet thing is, like an ESET disc that I got in them, I never change it for corner beans. I just plant them all the way because it's just turning so slow it doesn't make any difference. And so, but I think the narrow row beans look to me like to be, I would say, I would call both of these 20 and twin 20 narrow row beans. 30-inch beans have worked well in the area. There's no question in this room there's 90 bushel 30-inch beans. No question in my mind. And so it comes down to, we talk about daylight management and when did we get them in the ground. And I would think the earlier you could plant them, the better. Just more sunlight that we can digest.
If I start using starter and nitrogen on the planter, can I start planting in cooler soils?
Well, I don't think there's any question that gives you an advantage. We know that at 65 degrees is where soils start to release nutrients. So if we're going to spoon feed those seedling roots, then we're going to be able to go into the... It all comes down, though, understanding this year, how many of you planted into that April 22nd weekend? Yeah, painful, wasn't it? And so it's all about the first drink. And so when do you and I know we're out here and we're going to put corn in here? In 36 hours of planting, it's going to take its first drink. In other words, the temperature of that water that comes into the pericarp has a tremendous effect on it. If it's 50 degrees or less, bad deal. Probably going to be replant. If it's 55 degrees or higher at 36 hours, you're going to be in good shape. And so we watch this all the time. We're on AccuWeather all the time saying, when we're planning, what does 36 hours from now look like? And so when I saw that rain front coming in on April 21st, 22nd, 23rd, we stopped. And we parked all the planters. Because we knew this was going to be a negative. That probably had more hits on social, that little ditty I did. I don't know if it got to 100,000 comments, but it was ridiculous. People were not happy. And the reality is it doesn't matter what you and I think. It's what this seed feels and experiences. So first drink is real. You need to understand that if we're going to say that we want every plant to produce an ear. So the guys that planted that, they had anywhere from 12 to 18,000 stands, and that's a painful thing. And it's all about replant. When do you pull the trigger, and do you replant? Yes, you should replant. It's pretty hard to sit here of 12 to 18,000 plants and think you're going to have the kind of success you want. And when we replant, we're talking about tearing it up, not interplanting. Interplanting competition between plants. So this 50 degrees is something you need to watch. Here's your goal. 36 hours after planting, you want it to take a drink at 55 degrees. So if maybe it's only 48 degrees the day you're planting, and that doesn't worry me. I'm not worried about the day you're planting what the soil temperature is. I'm worried what it's going to be 36 hours from now. And if it's going to be 70 degrees ahead, get her going. Let her roll. You'll be fine. So.
Any questions here? You're adding a lot of irrigation. It looks like you're adding pivot. How do you decide, you've got experience with pivot and drip, how do you decide between pivot and drip?
Dollars. It's very simple. It's almost 2x. Drip is almost 2x over a pivot, okay? And so if you can be here at $850 an acre, this here is going to be over $2,000 an acre. And so the efficiency is here. The yield is here. Being able to feed nitrogen in the root system, sulfur, all your micros, this is a sweet system. There's a lot of cost and a lot of effort putting it in. And so I think it needs some work. I think it needs to be reinvented, and I'm just short personnel to go ahead and I got a lot of ideas what I think that should look like. Winterizing is not a problem. You just get a big heavy-duty commercial air compressor and we just blow it out. As long as you don't go over 30 psi on the system, you'll be fine, and you just open up your flush lines at the end of the field. So say your drip pad's here and all your flush lines are exit over here, and you just drain the whole system because it will freeze. And so you just drain it all. So I think it's got a lot of possibility. I would say this. Over dry land, I could say you could pencil in 80 to 100 bushel advantage over dry land. I've seen it year after year. So the payback could be pretty quick. So, but pivot by far, for our specialty crops, the pivot seems to be, if you can get into this $900 an acre range, that's where you need to play. Questions? We don't want to hold you too long.
Yep, we'll do one more here from the internet. And if you have any others, we'll stay. With your on-planter and side dress program, is there still a need for pre-plant at all?
No.
Well, that was short. All right. That's it.
They
I've never heard you give a one-word answer in my life.
They can't leave till they eat all the desserts, or Cindy's going to be mad at me. So as you go out, grab all the food that you see sitting out yet. And I want to thank you for coming. I'm honored. I can't believe you take the time. It is a treat. I have a great team of white shirts that work with me. I can't thank my engineering team enough. This year we had a push on. We introduced 6 new products. It was kind of craziness, but it was a lot of fun, and these guys made it happen. So as you go out, stop by any of the white shirts and thank them for the great job they're doing, because I love building technology. But thank you for coming. You have a great winter and a super spring, and appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Don't forget to take your cushions home with you.
Your seat cushion.